The tragic downfall of the Mad Queen, from jealous fury to heartbreaking revenge. Juana La Loca's life was no fairy tale behind the so-called madness of one of Europe's most infamous queens. Lies a web of relentless tragedy, layer upon layer of sorrow that few truly understand. Juana of Castile, 1479 to 1555. Often referred to by her infamous epithet, Juana La Loca. Juana the Mad endured a lifetime of emotional devastation. Love and betrayal, ambition and deception, all of it consumed a woman who once had the world at her feet, only to descend into a fate marked by humiliation and heartbreak. Juana was born to two of the most powerful monarchs of her time, Queen Isabella I of Castile and King Ferdinand II of Aragon, rulers who, through a political marriage, hoped to one day unite Spain. Though theirs was a strategic alliance, the relationship was more of a partnership than a love story. From a young age, Juana displayed remarkable intelligence. She excelled in a range of subjects: mathematics, languages, history, philosophy, and was known for her sharp mind and emotional depth. But her strong-willed and sensitive personality often clashed with the strict religious expectations of her household. Her parents were devout, fervent Catholics, but Juana, even as a teenager, began to question the faith she was forced to follow. She found little joy in the daily rituals of prayer, and for her defiance, her mother, Queen Isabella, resorted to brutal punishments. She would bind Juana's hands with rope, attach weights to her feet, and suspend her in the air as a form of discipline. Despite the physical torment, Juana never wished to be labeled a heretic. Her mind remained sharp, her spirit conflicted. The seeds of what the world would later call madness were, in truth, a mix of intense emotion, repression, and deep inner turmoil. The marriage that became a prison, Juana of Castile received one of the finest educations available in 15th century Europe. Trained alongside her royal sisters, she was groomed from an early age to become the perfect daughter and instrument of political diplomacy for her powerful parents. Queen Isabella of Castile and King Ferdinand of Aragon at just 16 years old, Juana was married off to Philip, Duke of Burgundy and heir of the powerful Habsburg dynasty. Known throughout Europe as Philip the Handsome, he was just a year older than Juana and celebrated for his stunning looks. Juana herself was no less captivating. Alabaster skin, striking blue eyes, and golden brown hair that shimmered like sunlight. There should have been a match of power and beauty. But what followed was anything but a fairy tale. A love built on betrayal. Juana adored Philip. She idolized him. But for Philip, Juana's beauty was not enough to satisfy his lust. A notorious womanizer, he quickly resumed his affairs after their wedding, leaving Juana heartbroken. Enraged and spiraling into depression, her love turned into obsession. Her jealousy, once quiet, became explosive. Whenever she caught wind of one of Philip's lovers, she lashed out, once cutting off a mistress's hair with scissors, slapping faces, and even stabbing one in the cheek in a jealous rage. But Philip didn't respond with remorse. He responded with cruelty. The queen becomes a captive. As Juana's emotional state unraveled, Philip grew more violent. He locked her in rooms. He beat her for speaking out. He tried to break her spirit and nearly succeeded. But Juana refused to submit. Despite being trapped in a marriage of betrayal and abuse, she fought to hold on to her identity. Yet the emotional toll was immense. Her days were filled with despair. She changed clothes obsessively, experimented with different hairstyles, and even resorted to medieval love potions, all in a desperate attempt to win back her husband's affection. It was all in vain. Philip's true nature revealed, according to historians. Philip's cruelty knew no bounds. He stripped Juana of her dignity, her agency, and eventually her children. When Juana gave birth to a daughter in November 1498, Philip mocked her. A failure, he sneered. Only sons matter. He refused to contribute a single coin for the girl's upbringing. Worse still, he froze Juana's finances. A queen reduced to poverty in her own palace. She couldn't even afford her meals. By 1501, Juana had given birth to 3 children, Eleanor, Charles, and Isabella. But Philip tore them away from her and sent them to be raised by his sister, Margaret, in the Netherlands. Juana's heart was shattered, and still she didn't reach out to her parents. Not because she didn't want to, but because, in her soul, everything had already collapsed. The Mad Queen. In September 1506, Philip suddenly died of typhoid fever. However, many historical accounts suggest he may have been poisoned by his father-in-law. After Philip's death, Juana's mental state became increasingly unstable, especially since she was 6 months pregnant with their final child, Catherine. Juana clung to and caressed her husband's corpse for days before finally allowing it to be placed in a coffin. Not long after the burial, she suspected the body had been stolen. She ordered the grave to be opened and the coffin unsealed to verify. Afterward, she kissed his feet until someone forcibly pulled her away. From that moment, Juana insisted on keeping Philip's coffin with her during the 668 kilometers journey from Burgos to Granada, where he was to be buried permanently. She forbade any women from coming near the coffin, perhaps because, in life, her husband's unfaithfulness haunted her so much that in death, she wanted to ensure no other woman would ever come close to him again. A year later, Juana was locked away by her father, declared insane. Though she remained queen on paper, she was stripped of all power. In 1516, King Ferdinand fell gravely ill. His second marriage had not produced a male heir, meaning the crown of Aragon would pass to Juana, making her queen of both Castile and Aragon. Before dying, Ferdinand requested that power be transferred to his grandson, also named Ferdinand, Juana's second son, instead of Charles, her eldest. However, Charles traveled to Spain, met his mother, and easily obtained her signature to officially declare himself corrupt. By then, Juana had spent years in captivity. Her mental health deteriorated further. She became withdrawn, fearful, and deeply unstable. Charles had no interest in helping his mother recover. Keeping her imprisoned ensured his unchallenged reign. Juana remained confined until the end of her life. In 1519, Charles ascended as Holy Roman Emperor, head of the powerful Habsburg dynasty. The Spanish people were furious. They saw Charles as a foreigner ruling them for the benefit of his empire. They revolted, demanding Juana's release and Charles's removal. But Juana refused to oppose her son. The people eventually gave up. Charles then instructed Juana's attendants not to speak to her. She fell into delusions and paranoia, unable to eat or bathe normally. This prison-like existence continued for decades, until her death in 1555, ending a life filled with suffering and tragedy. Historians still ask, was Juana truly mad? Whether yes or no, one thing is undeniable. She endured unbearable loss and betrayal from the 3 men who meant the most to her: her father, her husband, and her son. That alone is enough to shatter any heart and mind.